A woman glanced out of an airplane window and noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. 4 simple words from her mouth prevented a disaster that could have killed everyone on board. This is the story of how one passenger's sharp eyes and quick thinking saved hundreds of lives 30,000 feet above the ground. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please, like and subscribe for more videos like this. Sarah Mitchell was never the type to cause a scene. She worked as a quality control inspector at a manufacturing plant in Detroit, spending her days examining tiny details that most people would overlook. Her friends often joked that she could spot a crooked picture frame from across a crowded room. On this particular Tuesday morning in March, Sarah was heading to Seattle for her sister's wedding. She had been looking forward to this trip for months, carefully packing her bridesmaid dress and rehearsing her toast in front of the bathroom mirror. The airport was unusually quiet for a weekday. Sarah arrived 2 hours early, as she always did, and treated herself to a coffee and a muffin at the terminal cafe. She scrolled through her phone, looking at photos her sister had sent of the wedding venue. The ceremony would take place in a beautiful garden overlooking Puget Sound. Sarah could already imagine the ocean breeze and the smell of flowers in the air. Boarding began right on schedule. Sarah made her way down the jet bridge with her carry-on bag, greeting the flight attendants with a polite smile. Her seat was in row 17, a window seat on the left side of the aircraft. She loved window seats. There was something peaceful about watching the world shrink below as the plane climbed into the sky. Sarah settled in, fastening her seatbelt and placing her bag under the seat in front of her. The plane was nearly full, with families heading on vacation and business travelers typing away on their laptops. The engines roared to life as the aircraft pushed back from the gate. Sarah felt the familiar vibration beneath her feet as they began taxiing toward the runway. She pulled out her book, but found herself staring out the window instead, watching the ground crew in their bright vests, directing planes and loading luggage. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, welcoming everyone aboard and announcing an estimated flight time of 4 hours and 30 minutes. The weather in Seattle was clear and sunny, perfect for a wedding weekend. As the plane turned onto the runway, Sarah noticed the wing outside her window. She had flown dozens of times before and always found herself studying the mechanical details of the aircraft. The flaps extended smoothly, preparing for takeoff. The engines grew louder, building power. But then Sarah saw something that made her stomach drop. On the outer edge of the wing, near one of the flaps, there was a panel that did not look right. It was slightly raised, almost as if it had not been secured properly. A thin gap ran along its edge, and as the wind rushed past the wing during taxi, she could see the panel vibrating. Sarah leaned closer to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool plastic. She blinked and looked again, hoping her eyes were playing tricks on her. But no, the panel was definitely loose. She could see it moving, rattling against the wing's surface. Her heart began to race. She knew that planes were built with redundancy and safety measures, but she also knew that loose panels could cause serious problems at high speeds. They could tear away completely, damage other parts of the aircraft, or disrupt the airflow over the wing. The plane was accelerating now, picking up speed as it rolled down the runway. Sarah glanced around frantically. Most passengers were absorbed in their phones or books, oblivious to what she had spotted. The man next to her had his eyes closed, already trying to nap. Sarah felt a wave of panic wash over her. Should she say something? What if she was wrong? What if she caused an unnecessary delay and everyone got angry at her? But what if she was right? What if staying silent meant putting hundreds of lives at risk? The aircraft was moving faster now, the runway lights blurring past her window. In seconds, they would reach takeoff speed and lift into the air. Sarah made her decision. She pressed the call button above her head, jabbing it repeatedly with her thumb. A flight attendant in the forward galley glanced back, initially with a look of mild annoyance at being summoned during takeoff. Sarah waved her hand urgently, trying to signal that this was an emergency. The flight attendant began walking down the aisle, holding on to the seat backs for balance as the plane continued to accelerate. Sarah's mind was racing. She knew she had to be clear and direct. There was no time for long explanations or uncertainty. When the flight attendant reached her row, leaning down to hear what Sarah needed, Sarah pointed out the window and spoke for words that would change everything. "The wing is broken." The flight attendant's expression shifted instantly from confusion to alarm. She leaned across Sarah to look out the window, her eyes widening as she spotted the loose panel rattling violently in the wind. Without hesitation, she grabbed the intercom phone from the wall and pressed a button, connecting directly to the cockpit. Sarah could not hear what was being said, but she saw the urgency in the flight attendant's face as she described what they were seeing. Within seconds, the entire plane lurched as the pilot slammed on the brakes. The deceleration was so sudden that passengers jerked forward in their seats, bags sliding in the overhead compartments. Confused voices filled the cabin as people looked around, wondering what had happened. The plane slowed quickly, the roar of the engines diminishing as the pilots aborted the takeoff. They were still on the runway, but they had stopped with plenty of room to spare. Sarah felt her heart pounding in her chest, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but serious. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have aborted our takeoff due to a possible mechanical issue. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened while we return to the gate. We apologize for the inconvenience and will provide more information shortly." The cabin erupted in nervous chatter. Passengers were confused, some annoyed at the delay, others worried about what had gone wrong. The plane turned around slowly and began the long taxi back to the terminal. Sarah sat in silence, still staring out the window at the loose panel. She felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Had she done the right thing? What if the engineers checked and found nothing wrong? She would look like a paranoid fool who had disrupted an entire flight over nothing. But as they approached the gate, Sarah saw something that confirmed her fears had been justified. Ground crew members were already waiting on the tarmac, along with several people in maintenance uniforms, carrying equipment. The moment the plane stopped and the engines shut down, they swarmed toward the wing Sarah had been watching. One of them climbed up on a ladder to inspect the panel up close. Even from inside the cabin, Sarah could see him shaking his head and gesturing to the others below. A few minutes later, the captain emerged from the cockpit and walked directly to Sarah's row. He was an older man with grey hair and a kind face, but his expression was grave. He knelt in the aisle next to her seat and spoke quietly so as not to alarm the other passengers further. "Ma'am, I want to thank you personally for speaking up. The maintenance team has confirmed that an access panel was improperly secured during a routine inspection last night. If we had taken off, it likely would have torn away at altitude. Best case scenario, we would have had to make an emergency landing. Worst case, well, I do not even want to think about that. You may have saved a lot of lives today." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes, a mixture of relief and delayed shock. She had been right. Her instinct to speak up, despite her fear of being wrong or causing trouble, had prevented a potential catastrophe. The captain squeezed her shoulder gently before standing and addressing the entire cabin over the intercom. He explained what had happened without going into frightening detail, thanking the observant passenger who had alerted the crew to the problem. Several passengers turned to look at Sarah, some offering nods of gratitude, others looking pale as they realized how close they had come to disaster. The flight was delayed for 3 hours while a replacement aircraft was prepared. The airline moved all the passengers to a new plane and offered meal vouchers as an apology for the inconvenience. Sarah sat in the terminal, still processing what had happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, asking if she had landed yet. Sarah smiled and typed back that she would explain everything when she arrived, but that she was fine and would definitely make it in time for the wedding. When Sarah finally boarded the new aircraft, the same captain was at the controls. He personally greeted her at the door, shaking her hand and thanking her again. The flight attendants treated her like a hero, upgrading her to first class and making sure she had everything she needed. As the plane lifted off the runway, Sarah looked out the window at the wings, watching them flex and move exactly as they should. This time, everything was perfect. The story of what happened that day spread quickly. Local news picked it up first, then national outlets. Sarah found herself being interviewed by reporters who wanted to know what had made her speak up when so many others would have stayed silent. She struggled to put it into words. It was not that she was braver than anyone else or had special training. She had simply trusted her instincts and refused to ignore something that looked wrong, even when doubt and fear tried to convince her to stay quiet. The airline launched an investigation into how the panel had been left unsecured. They discovered that a maintenance technician had been interrupted during a routine inspection and had forgotten to complete the final checks before signing off on the work. New protocols were immediately put in place to prevent such oversights in the future. The technician was retrained rather than fired. As the airline recognized that the real failure was in their systems, not in one individual's mistake, Sarah made it to her sister's wedding and gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying. She talked about love, commitment, and the importance of speaking up when something does not feel right. Her sister hugged her tightly afterward, whispering that she was proud of her. As Sarah stood in that garden overlooking the water, surrounded by family and friends, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for her own awareness, for the crew who had listened to her, and for the fact that everyone on that plane had made it home safely. In the months that followed, Sarah received letters from passengers who had been on that flight. Parents thanked her for allowing them to see their children again. A young couple wrote to say they had gotten married the following month and named Sarah as an honorary guest in their program. An elderly man sent a photo of himself with his grandchildren, explaining that he might not have met his newest grandson if the plane had taken off that day. Each letter reminded Sarah that her 4 words had rippled outward, touching countless lives she would never fully know about. The airline gave Sarah free flights for life, a gesture she appreciated but never really needed. What mattered more to her was knowing that she had made a difference. She continued working at her job in Detroit, still inspecting details that others might miss, but now with a deeper understanding of why that attention to detail mattered. She no longer worried about seeming foolish or causing trouble when something looked wrong. She had learned that speaking up, even when you are uncertain, even when it is uncomfortable, can be the difference between tragedy and safety. Sarah Mitchell never wanted to be a hero. She was just a woman on her way to a wedding who happened to look out a window at the right moment and had the courage to say something when every instinct told her to stay quiet. But sometimes, that is exactly what heroism looks like. It is not about grand gestures or dramatic actions. It is about trusting yourself, trusting your observations, and having the bravery to speak for simple words when lives depend on it. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.